The great chamber of the Galactic Council stretched out like a vast cathedral, its crystalline walls reaching up into darkness. Thousands of alien beings filled the curved seats, their forms ranging from insect-like creatures with multiple limbs to towering beings made of living rock. At the center of it all stood a single human woman, looking impossibly small against the massive architecture. Ambassador Lisa Grant kept her back straight as laughter echoed through the chamber. The sound came from dozens of different species, creating a chorus of clicks, hisses, and roars that would have terrified most humans. But Lisa had been preparing for this moment for 3 years. She had learned to speak their languages, studied their cultures, and memorized every diplomatic protocol. None of that seemed to matter now. "Your species wishes to join our confederation," said Council Prime Vextar, his crystalline form shifting colors from blue to a mocking purple. His voice carried clearly through the chamber's acoustics, each word dripping with contempt. "Yet what do you bring us? What makes humanity worthy of standing among the great civilizations of the galaxy?" Lisa stepped forward, her dress uniform crisp despite the long journey from Earth. "Honored Council Prime, humanity brings innovation, adaptability, and a strong desire for peaceful cooperation. Our scientists have made remarkable advances in medicine, agriculture, and environmental restoration. Our artists create works that inspire across cultural boundaries. Our diplomats seek understanding rather than dominance." More laughter filled the chamber. A massive creature that looked like a walking mountain leaned forward in his seat. War Leader Thok's voice rumbled like grinding stone. "Medicine? We conquered death itself 2,000 years ago. Agriculture? We grow crops on dead worlds you cannot even visit. As for your art and diplomacy," he made a sound that might have been laughter. "Pretty words from a pretty mouth, but where is your strength?" Lisa felt heat rise in her cheeks but kept her voice steady. "Strength comes in many forms, honored War Leader. We believe that—" "Belief," interrupted another voice. This came from Zeph Colonel Crix, whose insectoid form clicked with agitation. "Humans believe many things. You believe you deserve a place among us. You believe your fragile bodies and short lives have value. You believe weapons and armor make you strong, when any child of our species could tear through your finest soldiers like paper." The chamber erupted in approval. Aliens pounded their seats, clicked their claws, or made whatever sounds indicated agreement in their cultures. Lisa waited for the noise to die down, knowing that losing her temper would only prove their point. From the observation deck above, she could see Captain Jake Martinez watching with clenched fists. The sight of him reminded her that Earth's military leaders were monitoring every word of this exchange. "We do not claim to be the strongest species," Lisa said carefully, "but we offer something valuable, our perspective. Humanity has faced many challenges on our world. We have learned to work together despite our differences. We believe this experience could benefit the Confederation." Council Prime Vexitar's form shifted to a deeper purple, almost black. "Your perspective." "Let me share our perspective of humanity. You are a young species that has barely left your own solar system. Your bodies are weak. No natural armor, no claws, no poison, no ability to survive in the vacuum of space. Your lifespans are pathetically short. Most of you die before you have learned anything useful. Your technology is primitive," added another council member, this one resembling a giant slug with metallic appendages. "Your fastest ships would take decades to cross distances we travel in days. Your weapons are crude chemical explosives that could not scratch our children's toys. Your shields would not stop a strong breeze." Lisa opened her mouth to respond, but Vextar was not finished. "Most importantly, you have no warrior tradition worthy of respect. You fight among yourselves over trivial matters. Patches of dirt, shiny metals, abstract concepts. When faced with real threats, you surrender rather than die with honor. You negotiate rather than conquer. You show mercy to enemies who would destroy you." The chamber fell silent except for the soft humming of the translation systems. Lisa realized this was her moment to speak, perhaps her last chance to change their minds. She thought of Earth, of the blue oceans and green continents that had given birth to her species. She thought of the children who looked up at the stars and dreamed of meeting alien friends. She thought of the scientists and artists and farmers who had sent their best hopes with her to this place. "You see these qualities as weaknesses," Lisa said, her voice carrying clearly in the sudden quiet. "We see them as strengths. Yes, we are physically vulnerable, so we developed medicine to heal ourselves and technology to protect us. Yes, we have short lives, so we work together to accomplish more than any individual could alone. Yes, we prefer negotiation to conquest, because we have learned that cooperation builds lasting peace while domination breeds only revenge. Pretty words, rumbled War Leader Thok. But the galaxy is not a peaceful place. When the Devourers came from beyond the rim, your diplomacy would not have stopped them. When the plague ships spread death between stars, your medicine would have been useless. When the Dark Fleet swept through entire systems, your cooperation would have meant nothing. Strength stopped them. Power defeated them. The willingness to kill without mercy saved us all. Lisa felt the weight of their judgment pressing down on her. Perhaps you are right about the past, honored war leader. But what about the future? What happens when the next threat comes from within the Confederation itself? What happens when your strength turns against itself? Who will remember the value of mercy then? The question seemed to surprise them, but only for a moment. Zeph Colonel Crix rose from his seat, his multiple legs carrying him down to the chamber floor. Up close, Lisa could see that his exoskeleton was scarred from countless battles. Child, you understand nothing. The strong rule because they must. The weak serve because they cannot do otherwise. This is the natural order, tested across millions of years. Your species offers nothing but naive hopes and gentle weakness. The decision is made, announced Council Prime Vextar. His crystalline form had returned to its original blue, indicating the official nature of his words. Humanity's petition for membership in the Galactic Confederation is denied. Your species may reapply in 50 standard years, assuming you have developed something worthy of our attention by then. The gavel came down with a sound like breaking glass. Around the chamber, aliens began to file out, their conversations already moving to other matters. To them, humanity had been weighed, measured, and found wanting. The matter was closed. Lisa stood alone in the center of the great chamber as the crowds dispersed. Her hands shook slightly, but her voice was steady as she activated her communication device. Earth Control, this is Ambassador Grant. Negotiations have concluded. Recommend immediate implementation of Protocol 7. From the observation deck, Captain Jake Martinez watched her with new respect. He had expected anger or tears, but Lisa Grant looked like a woman who had just confirmed her deepest suspicions about the universe. As she walked toward the exit, her steps were firm and purposeful. In orbit above the Council world, Admiral Susan Blake received Lisa's transmission aboard her flagship. The massive woman had been expecting this outcome for months, but hearing it confirmed still sent a chill down her spine. She turned to her communications officer. Send the message to Earth Command. Full authorization. Begin Phase 1 immediately. The message traveled across space at quantum speeds, reaching Earth in minutes rather than months. In secret facilities around the planet and throughout the solar system, humans began to work with desperate purpose. They had asked for friendship and been offered contempt. They had sought cooperation and been given mockery. They had hoped for understanding and received only disdain. The aliens had made their position clear. They saw humanity as weak, pathetic, and unworthy of respect. They believed human bodies were fragile, human minds were naive, and human hearts were too soft for the harsh realities of galactic politics. They were about to learn just how wrong they could be. Come, and it would be a feast that the galaxy would never forget. War Leader Thok paced the bridge of his flagship like a caged predator, his massive Crexian form casting shadows across the command deck. The reports flooding in from across his fleet painted a picture that violated everything he understood about warfare. Ships were vanishing without explanation. Entire squadrons were being picked off by enemies that appeared and disappeared like phantoms. How many vessels have we lost in the last 6 hours? He demanded, his voice carrying the rumbling undertones that indicated barely controlled rage. 17 ships destroyed. 12 more heavily damaged, reported his tactical officer, whose pale exoskeleton betrayed his fear. The humans are using some kind of stealth technology we can't detect. Our sensors show empty space, then suddenly one of our ships explodes. Thok's claws scraped against the metal deck plating. His species had conquered half the galaxy through superior firepower and traditional military tactics. Face your enemy, overwhelm them with force, claim victory. These humans fought like cowards, striking from the shadows and vanishing before retaliation was possible. And their weapons? Thok asked, though he dreaded the answer. Beyond our current understanding, my leader. They fire projectiles that move faster than light, energy beams that ignore our shields, and something that appears to delete matter from existence. Our science teams are calling it impossible. Deep in the asteroid belt, Commander Pete Nelson led his squadron of quantum fighters through another hit-and-run attack. The sleek human vessels phased in and out of normal space, appearing behind alien formations long enough to destroy a target before vanishing again. His pilots had perfected the tactic over weeks of brutal training, learning to strike with surgical precision and disappear before the enemy could respond. Eagle 3, confirmed kill on the Zeltharian cruiser, reported Lieutenant Lucy Adams over the comm. Their shields didn't even register our quantum torpedoes. Pete smiled grimly inside his helmet. The aliens had shields designed to stop energy weapons and conventional projectiles, but quantum torpedoes existed partially outside normal reality. They passed through alien defenses like they weren't there, because from the torpedo's perspective, the shields literally didn't exist. Good work, Eagle 3. Form up on me for the next run. Intelligence says there's a Crexian command ship trying to coordinate their response about 50 kilometers spinward. The human fighters shifted through quantum space, covering the distance instantly. They materialized directly above the alien command vessel, their presence undetected until quantum disruptors began tearing through the ship's hull. The Crexian vessel tried to return fire, but the human fighters had already vanished back into the spaces between dimensions. Aboard the Zeltharian flagship Supremacy, Council Prime Vextar struggled to understand reports that challenged his most basic assumptions about reality. His crystalline form flickered through colors that had no names, displaying confusion and fear in equal measure. The humans appear to be using weapons that manipulate space and time itself, his science advisor explained, her translated voice carrying undertones of awe and terror. They can strike targets from dimensions we cannot access using projectiles that ignore the fundamental laws of physics. That's impossible, Vextar declared, his form flashing angry red. No species can simply ignore physical laws. There must be an explanation. Perhaps Council Prime. But whatever technology they possess, it is far beyond our current capabilities. We are fighting an enemy whose weapons we cannot comprehend and whose tactics we cannot predict. The psychological warfare was exactly what Dr. Helen Carter had designed it to be. From her laboratory deep within Luna Base, she monitored the alien communications with satisfaction. The enemy fleets were broadcasting their confusion and fear across all frequencies, allowing every ship in their armada to hear the panic in their commanders' voices. Phase 2 is proceeding perfectly, she reported to Admiral Blake. The aliens are starting to fear shadows. Their formations are breaking apart as individual captains try to avoid whatever killed the ships next to them. Excellent. Begin Phase 3. Phase 3 was the nightmare scenario that Helen had been saving for this moment. Hidden throughout the asteroid belt were gravity manipulation devices, weapons that could create miniature black holes on command. The technology was so dangerous that even testing it had required evacuating entire sections of space. Helen's fingers moved across her control interface, selecting targets with cold precision. She had studied the alien fleet formations for weeks, identifying the command ships that held their forces together. Now she would demonstrate what happened when humans decided that something needed to die. The first artificial black hole materialized directly beneath a Crexian battleship. The vessel didn't have time to raise shields or fire weapons. It simply fell into the gravitational singularity and was crushed out of existence in microseconds. The black hole collapsed moments later, but not before consuming 2 escort vessels that had been too close to the primary target. Across the alien fleet, sensors screamed warnings about gravitational anomalies that appeared and vanished without explanation. Ships that had survived the earlier attacks found themselves pulled off course by gravitational fields that existed where space should be empty. War leader, Thok watched in horror as another section of his fleet was consumed by forces that his science teams insisted were impossible. The humans weren't just using advanced weapons. They were weaponizing the fundamental forces of the universe itself. Retreat to minimum safe distance, he ordered, his voice carrying none of its usual authority. Signal the main fleet to hold position. We need time to understand what we're facing. But retreat was exactly what Admiral Blake had been hoping for. As the alien advance forces pulled back, they moved directly into the engagement zone that humanity had spent months preparing. Every asteroid, every piece of debris, every seemingly empty patch of space concealed weapons or sensors or both. Captain Roy Barnes commanded the heavy cruiser Vengeance from its position inside a hollowed-out asteroid. His ship was built around a single massive weapon, a kinetic accelerator that could fire projectiles at a significant percentage of light speed. When such projectiles struck a target, the results were less like an explosion and more like a small star going nova. "Target acquired," reported his weapons officer, a young woman named Lisa Taylor who had volunteered for the mission, despite its near-certain suicide odds. "Zeltharian Dreadnought, range 400,000 kilometers. Firing solution locked." Roy looked around his bridge at the crew who had followed him into this metal tomb. They all knew that firing the ship's main weapon would probably destroy their vessel along with the target. The kinetic accelerator drew so much power that it would likely overload every system on the ship. "Crew, you all know the odds," Roy announced. "Anyone who wants to transfer to an escape pod has 30 seconds. Nobody moved. These were people who had watched the aliens dismiss their species as weak and pathetic. They were ready to die to prove that humans could bite back. "Fire," Roy ordered. The kinetic projectile that erupted from the Vengeance moved so fast that it seemed to teleport from the ship to its target. When it struck the alien dreadnought, the massive vessel simply disintegrated, torn apart by forces that turned its own mass into a weapon against itself. The explosion was visible from Mars, a brief star that announced humanity's fury to anyone watching. The Vengeance died with its target, consumed by the backwash of energies from its own weapon. But Roy Barnes and his crew had accomplished their mission. They had shown the galaxy that humans would rather die fighting than live in chains. Similar scenes played out across the asteroid belt as human weapons revealed themselves. Ships that had been hiding for months emerged to fire once and die gloriously. Weapon platforms that had been disguised as mining equipment unleashed torrents of destruction before being destroyed by return fire. The aliens found themselves fighting not just an enemy, but an entire solar system that had been turned into a weapon. Commander Pete Nelson led his fighters on their final mission, knowing that their quantum drives were becoming unstable from overuse. The technology was too new, too dangerous for extended operations, but they had enough power left for one last strike. "All fighters, this is Eagle Leader. Target the command ships. Make every shot count." Phoenix Squadron and Eagle Squadron materialized simultaneously in the middle of the alien formation, appearing in spaces that should have been protected by overlapping shield coverage. Their quantum weapons fired in perfect coordination, targeting the vessels that held the enemy fleet together. In seconds, 12 alien command ships ceased to exist, deleted from reality by weapons that the galaxy's finest scientists couldn't explain. The coordinated alien response collapsed into chaos as individual captains found themselves cut off from their chain of command. Pete's fighter began shaking apart as its quantum drive overloaded. Around him, other human pilots were experiencing the same system failures, but their mission was complete. The alien advance fleet had been shattered. "All fighters, emergency quantum jump to rally point 7, Pete ordered, hoping his drive would hold together long enough. "And guys, it's been an honor. Half the fighters made it back to B." The alien retreat became a rout as human ships hunted down Flu. The news of the alien fleet's complete destruction spread across the galaxy like wildfire, carried by quantum communications and refugee ships fleeing human space. On worlds that had celebrated humanity's expected enslavement, alien leaders watched in growing horror as reports detailed the systematic annihilation of forces they had believed invincible. Commander Julia Stone stood on the bridge of the attack ship Nemesis as her fleet emerged from quantum space at the edge of the Zeltharian home system. The crystalline cities that covered the planet's surface gleamed like jewels in the light of their binary stars, beautiful and arrogant in their presumed invincibility. Those same cities had sent representatives to mock humanity's weakness just months before. "Sensor sweep complete," reported Lieutenant Danny Park from his station, detecting approximately 200 orbital defense platforms plus their home fleet. "Maybe 60 ships total." Julia smiled coldly as she studied the defensive positions. The Zeltharians had built their defenses assuming they would always be the attackers, never the attacked. Their weapon platforms were positioned to repel invasion fleets that approached along conventional attack routes. They had no defenses against enemies who could appear anywhere at will. "Signal all ships," Julia commanded. "Execute Operation Payback. Show them the price of calling humans weak." The human fleet that materialized throughout the Zeltharian system was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. These weren't the bulky warships of traditional space navies, but sleek predators designed for one purpose: to hunt down and kill enemies who had dismissed humanity as inferior. Each ship incorporated lessons learned from the battle for Earth, enhanced with technology that seemed to mock the fundamental laws of physics. The USS Retribution, rebuilt and improved after Major Nick Thompson's death at Earth, phased directly into the heart of the Zeltharian defensive grid. Its quantum artillery fired continuously, each shot deleting enemy platforms from existence before their crews could even sound alarms. The ship flickered in and out of normal space, impossible to target and equally impossible to escape. Captain Larry Mitchell commanded the stealth bomber Justice from his position inside one of the system's gas giant moons. His ship had been hiding there for weeks, its crew preparing for this moment with the patience of hunters who knew their prey would eventually come within range. Now, as Zeltharian ships scrambled to respond to the sudden attack, Larry activated the quantum charges his teams had planted throughout their defensive network. The explosions that tore through the orbital platforms weren't visible in the UA conventional sense. They were holes in reality itself, zones where the universe simply forgot that matter had ever existed there. Entire defense stations vanished without trace, leaving behind empty spaces that hurt to look at directly. Phase 1 complete, Larry reported to Commander Stone. Their defensive grid is down by 70%, beginning precision strikes on military targets. But Julia had no intention of limiting her attack to military targets. The Zeltharians had voted to enslave humanity, based on their supposed weakness. Every citizen of this world had celebrated the expected conquest, anticipating the wealth that would flow from human labor. Now they would learn what human weakness looked like when it was backed into a corner. All ships, expand target list to include infrastructure and population centers, Julia ordered, her voice carrying the cold authority of someone who had watched alien fleets approach her homeworld. These people wanted to own us. Let's show them what ownership really means. The human fleet dispersed throughout the system, each ship hunting independently while sharing targeting data through quantum communication links. The Zeltharian home fleet tried to mount a coordinated defense, but their ships had been designed for conventional warfare against enemies who followed established rules of engagement. The humans followed no rules except victory. Captain Tony Garcia led his squadron of quantum fighters through the crystalline cities, their weapons carving geometric patterns of destruction through structures that had stood for millennia. The Zeltharians had built their cities as monuments to their superiority over younger species. Now those monuments burned with fires that existed in dimensions the aliens couldn't perceive. The planetary defense network tried to track the human fighters, but the small ships phased in and out of normal space faster than Zeltharian sensors could follow. They appeared in the middle of shield coverage, fired their reality-warping weapons, and vanished before return fire could reach them. Civilian evacuation centers detected, reported Lieutenant Sarah Moore, her fighter dancing between the spires of a crystalline metropolis. Should we avoid them? Julia's response was immediate and cold. Negative. They voted for our extinction. Show them the same mercy they planned to show our children. The quantum weapons that struck the evacuation centers didn't simply kill, they erased. Entire city blocks vanished from existence, leaving behind geometric voids that would remain empty for centuries to come. The Zeltharians who had laughed at human weakness now fled in terror from enemies whose mercy had been exhausted. Meanwhile, on the fortress world of Crexia, war leader Thok's replacement marshaled the remnants of their military for what every Crexian knew would be their final battle. General Vrock was younger than Thok, but he had learned from the disaster at Earth. He knew that humans fought with weapons and tactics that made conventional military thinking obsolete. Disperse all forces across the entire system, Vrock ordered, his massive form moving through the command bunker deep beneath Crexia's armored surface. No concentrated formations, no predictable patterns. Make them hunt us down one ship at a time. But the human fleet that arrived at Crexia had been expecting exactly this response. Captain Pete Nelson, now promoted to admiral after his survival of the Earth battle, brought with him weapons specifically designed to deal with dispersed enemy forces. Gravity mines deployed, reported his tactical officer Lieutenant Ben Foster. Full system coverage in 30 minutes. Any ship that moves faster than orbital velocity will trigger automatic targeting. The Crexian strategy of dispersal became a death trap as human weapons turned the entire star system into a minefield. Ships that tried to maneuver found themselves caught by artificial gravity wells that dragged them into weapons platforms, hidden throughout the asteroid belts. Vessels that remained stationary became easy targets for human bombers that could appear anywhere at will. Admiral Nelson watched the systematic destruction of Crexian forces with the satisfaction of someone settling a debt. "Remember," he announced to his fleet, "these are the people who said humans would make good slaves. Show them what their slaves are capable of." The battle for Crexia lasted 18 hours. When it ended, the fortress world that had boasted of never being conquered lay in ruins beneath a sky filled with human ships. The proud Crexian military, which had claimed the right to rule other species through strength, had been reduced to scattered groups of survivors hiding in deep bunkers. But the most devastating psychological blow came when Admiral Nelson broadcast his victory across all Crexian communication networks. His message was simple and brutal. "Your war leader Thok called humans weak. Your people voted to make us slaves. This is what weak humans do to those who threaten our freedom." Across the galaxy, alien civilizations watched their most powerful neighbors fall to human fleets that appeared without warning and fought without mercy. The species that had laughed at humanity's diplomatic overtures now faced a terrible choice: surrender immediately, or face the same systematic destruction that had befallen the Zeltharians and Crexians. Some chose surrender. The hegemony of Spiral Worlds sent immediate messages of capitulation, offering to serve human interests in exchange for their continued existence. The Crystal Confederation disbanded itself entirely, hoping that their individual worlds might escape human attention if they were no longer part of a unified government. Others chose to fight. The Void Hunters, a species that had built their civilization on conquest and slavery, decided that even humans couldn't be as ruthless as their reputation suggested. They discovered their error when human fleets arrived at their worlds carrying weapons that turned suns into bombs and planets into asteroid fields. The Cosmic Empire, which ruled over 100 subjugated species, mobilized every ship they possessed for a final desperate battle. They met human forces at the Magellan Nexus, a strategic point that controlled trade routes between entire galactic arms. The battle lasted 3 days and ended with the complete extinction of the Empire's ruling species. Ambassador Lisa Grant, now serving as humanity's first Minister of Galactic Affairs, watched the reports flood in from conquered alien worlds. The diplomatic skills she had tried to use peacefully were now being employed to accept the surrender of species that had once mocked her efforts. "How many civilizations have requested terms?" she asked her aide, Captain Jake Martinez, who had been promoted to serve as her military liaison. 47 confirmed surrenders. 12 more asking for negotiation, Jake replied, consulting his tablet. The rest appeared to be either in hiding or preparing for last stands. Lisa nodded, feeling the weight of her new responsibilities. The galaxy that had rejected humanity's peace fee. Captain Julia Stone, now commanding the enforcement division responsible for hunting down war criminals, reported her latest success to Admiral Blake. "The former Council Prime Vextar has been located and eliminated," she announced from her ship's bridge. He was hiding in a mining station in the outer spiral, along with 12 other former Confederation leaders. "Excellent work," Susan replied. 6 months after the last shot was fired in what historians would call the Human Galactic War, Admiral Susan Blake stood in the same chamber where Ambassador Lisa Grant had once been mocked for humanity's weakness. The crystalline walls still reached into darkness, but now they bore scorch marks from human weapons, permanent reminders of the day when diplomatic immunity had proven less effective than quantum artillery. The chamber was filled again, but the composition had changed dramatically. Where once thousands of alien representatives had sat in judgment of humanity, now only a few hundred remained. The rest were either dead, their species extinct, or had fled to the far reaches of the galaxy, where human fleets had not yet bothered to hunt them down. "The Galactic Confederation is hereby dissolved," Susan announced, her voice carrying easily through the chamber's acoustics. Unlike Lisa's desperate diplomatic appeals, Susan's words carried the authority of someone who had just conquered half the galaxy. "In its place, we establish the Human Galactic Protectorate." The alien survivors listened in silence. Some, like the remaining Zeltharian delegates, bore the pale coloration that indicated fear and submission. Others, representatives of species that had surrendered early enough to avoid complete conquest, maintained careful neutrality. None dared to object. Ambassador Lisa Grant, now bearing the title of First Minister of Galactic Affairs, stepped forward to address the assembly. The same woman who had been dismissed as weak and naive now commanded the respect of terror from species that had once considered her inferior. The Protectorate will operate under new principles, Lisa announced, consulting the document that had been drafted by humanity's finest legal minds. First, no species may maintain military forces capable of interstellar warfare without human authorization. Second, all scientific research must be shared freely with human oversight committees. Third, any act of aggression against human citizens or human-protected worlds will be considered an act of war against humanity itself. Captain Jake Martinez, now wearing the insignia of a full admiral, watched the alien reaction to these terms with satisfaction. He remembered standing in this same chamber months ago, listening to alien laughter as they dismissed humanity's diplomatic overtures. None of them were laughing now. The transformation of the galaxy had been swift and merciless. Human fleets patrolled every major star system, their quantum drives allowing them to appear anywhere at a moment's notice. The weapons that had once been experimental prototypes were now mass-produced, equipping a new generation of human warships that made the original fleet look primitive by comparison. Captain Ryan Foster, now commanding the massive dreadnought Humanity's Fury, represented the new breed of human naval officers. These were men and women who had never known defeat, who had been raised to see the galaxy as humanity's rightful domain. They were polite to alien representatives, but their politeness carried the implicit threat of extinction. What about species that refuse these terms? Asked a delegate from the Rim Confederacy, one of the few remaining independent governments. Lisa smiled, and the expression was far colder than anything the aliens had seen during the old diplomatic meetings. Admiral Blake will demonstrate what happens to species that refuse human protection. Susan activated a holographic display that showed the former Void Lord Empire, once a collection of 40 systems that had ruled through force and intimidation. The display now showed empty space marked by radiation signatures and debris fields. 40 entire star systems had been rendered uninhabitable by human weapons that weaponized stellar matter itself. The Void Lords chose to fight, rather than surrender, Susan explained calmly. We accommodated their choice. Their entire species no longer exists, and their worlds will remain radioactive wastelands for the next 10,000 years. The chamber fell silent, except for the soft humming of translation systems. Several alien delegates shifted nervously in their seats, their various forms of body language all expressing the same emotion: terror at the casual way humans discussed genocide. However, Lisa continued, her tone becoming more diplomatic, species that accept integration into the Protectorate will find themselves far better off than they were under the old Confederation. Human technology will be shared freely. Human medicine will extend lifespans and eliminate diseases. Human agricultural techniques will end hunger on every world. This was the carrot that accompanied the stick. Humanity had learned that pure terror was less effective than terror mixed with genuine benefits. The species that served human interests faithfully found their worlds transformed by technology that seemed like magic. Those that resisted learned what human weapons could do to entire solar systems. Dr. Nathan Price, now bearing the title of Director of Technological Integration, stepped forward to address the assembly. The thin, nervous man who had once worried about the safety of experimental weapons now commanded research facilities that spanned dozens of worlds. The human approach to scientific advancement differs from traditional galactic methods, he explained to the alien delegates. We don't hoard knowledge or restrict research to preserve power structures. Instead, we share discoveries freely among species that prove their loyalty to human leadership. The results of this policy were already visible throughout human-controlled space. Alien worlds that had once struggled with resource scarcity now thrived under human technological assistance. Species that had been locked into primitive industrial methods now operated fusion reactors and quantum computers. Medical techniques that had been impossible under the old Confederation were now routine procedures. But the technology came with conditions. Every research facility was monitored by human observers. Every major scientific project required human approval. And most importantly, any attempt to weaponize human technology against its creators would result in the complete sterilization of the offending world. Commander Pete Nelson, now Admiral of the 7th Fleet, commanded one of the massive human battle groups that maintained order throughout the Protectorate. His ships were stationed at the edge of former Crexian space, where his crews continued to hunt down the remnants of war leader Thok's forces. Status report, Pete requested from his flagship, the Dreadnought Vengeance Eternal. 17 more Crexian holdouts eliminated this week, reported his intelligence officer, Lieutenant Ben Foster. We're picking up signals from maybe a dozen more groups hiding in asteroid belts and dead systems. They're running out of places to hide. Pete nodded with satisfaction. The systematic elimination of Crexian military forces had become something of a specialty for his fleet. The species that had boasted of their warrior traditions were learning that human warriors were far more thorough in their application of violence. Any word from the diplomatic corps about prisoner exchanges? Pete asked. Negative, sir. The official policy remains that Crexians who participated in the planned invasion of human space are enemy combatants to be eliminated on sight. No quarter given, none asked. This policy had been controversial even among human leaders, but Admiral Blake had insisted on its necessity. The Crexians had been too enthusiastic about enslaving humanity, too vocal in their contempt for human weakness. Their complete elimination served as an example to other species considering resistance to human rule. On Earth, President Rachel Adams addressed a joint session of the Global Defense Council and the newly formed Galactic Administration. The woman who had authorized humanity's desperate gamble now presided over an empire that spanned thousands of worlds. The integration of alien populations into the Protectorate is proceeding ahead of schedule, she reported. To the assembled leaders, 17 species have achieved full partner status, meaning their worlds operate under human guidance but maintain local autonomy. 23 others are in various stages of probationary membership. And the resistant populations? Asked General Frank Collins, whose ground forces were responsible for maintaining order on occupied worlds. Being dealt with according to established protocols, President Adams replied diplomatically. The protocols in question involved the systematic elimination of alien leaders who refused to accept human authority. But such details were rarely discussed in official meetings. The transformation of galactic civilization was proceeding with ruthless efficiency. Alien educational systems were being restructured to emphasize human achievements and the benefits of human leadership. Historical records were being edited to remove references to human weakness and replace them with accounts of human mercy and victory. Art and literature were being encouraged to celebrate the new order, but perhaps the most significant change was generational. Young aliens who had grown up under human rule knew only a galaxy where humans were the dominant species. To them, the idea that their parents had once considered humans weak seemed absurd. These children learned human languages, studied human history, and dreamed of earning citizenship in the Protectorate through loyal service. Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of his spaceship. His hands were steady, but his heart was beating fast. After 50 years of trying, humans had finally made contact with aliens. Real aliens from other worlds. The ship was called New Frontier, and it was carrying the most important people from Earth. The alien space station was huge. It was bigger than any city on Earth. The station was made of strange metals that seemed to glow in the starlight. Jake had never seen anything like it. Neither had any other human. This was their first time meeting aliens, and they wanted to make a good impression. Admiral Lisa Hayes walked up beside Jake. She was the highest-ranking military officer on the mission. Lisa had gray hair and serious eyes. She had spent her whole life preparing for this moment. "Are you ready for this, Jake?" she asked. Jake nodded. As ready as anyone can be for meeting aliens who have been flying between stars for thousands of years. The space station had a docking bay that could hold 100 ships like theirs. As they got closer, Jake could see other alien ships. Some looked like they were made of crystal. Others seemed to be made of flowing water that somehow held its shape in space. There were ships that looked like giant trees and others that seemed to be made of pure light. Dr. Helen Carter joined them on the bridge. She was Earth's best diplomat. Helen had spent years learning everything humans knew about alien cultures. But all of that information had come from old radio signals and distant observations. Now she would meet real aliens face to face. "Remember," Helen said to Jake and Lisa, "we need to show them that humans are ready to join the galactic community. We need to prove that Earth deserves to be part of their alliance. The alliance was called the Galactic Council. It was made up of 12 different alien species from across the galaxy. Each species was more advanced than humans. They had faster ships, better weapons, and technology that humans could barely understand. But the council was fair. They gave every new species a chance to prove themselves. The docking was smooth. Jake had to admit that alien technology was impressive. The docking bay used some kind of gravity control to pull their ship into place. On Earth, docking was always bumpy and difficult. Here it felt like landing on a cloud. When they stepped off their ship, Jake felt strange. The gravity was different here. The air smelled like ozone and flowers. The walls of the docking bay seemed to shift colors as they walked. Everything was alien, but somehow beautiful. A group of aliens waited for them. Jake recognized some of the species from the photos they had studied. The tall ones with gray skin and 4 arms were Chronari. They were the military leaders of the council. The shorter ones that looked like they were made of living crystal were Zephyrians. They were the scientists and engineers. There were also Aquarians who looked like humans made of clear, moving water. The strangest ones were the Etherians, who seemed to be made of pure energy wrapped in a thin shell of matter. Jake had to force himself not to stare. The leader of the group was a Chronari named Vextar. He was over 8 feet tall and his gray skin had dark stripes. His forearms moved independently as he gestured. When he spoke, his voice was deep and rumbling. "Welcome, humans from Earth," Vextar said. His words came through a small device that translated alien speech into English. "We are the Galactic Council. We will decide if your species is ready to join civilized space." Helen stepped forward and bowed politely. "Thank you for this opportunity. Humanity is honored to be considered for membership in the Galactic Council." Vextar made a sound that might have been laughter. "We will see if you are truly worthy. Follow us to the council chamber." The council chamber was enormous. It could have held 10,000 people easily. There were viewing areas for each of the 12 alien species. Jake felt very small as he looked up at the towering ceiling. The humans were given a small area near the center of the room. One by one, representatives from each alien species spoke about humanity. They had been watching Earth for many years. They knew about human history, human technology, and human conflicts. The Zephyrian representative spoke in a voice like ringing bells. "Humans are an interesting species," she said. "They are creative and determined. But they are also primitive. Their technology is crude. Their weapons are simple. Their bodies are fragile." An Aquarian delegate flowed forward. His body rippled like water as he moved. "Humans have potential," he admitted. "But they are too violent. They fight among themselves constantly. They have had hundreds of wars on their single planet. How can they be trusted in space?" Jake felt his face getting red. These aliens were talking about humans like they were children or pets, but he knew he had to stay calm. This was too important to let emotions take control. The worst came when the military assessment was presented. Admiral Lisa Hayes watched in growing anger as alien generals described Earth's defenses. They laughed at human spaceships. They called human weapons amusing toys. They said that a single alien warship could destroy Earth's entire space fleet without taking any damage. "Their nuclear weapons are obsolete," declared a Chronari general. "Their missiles are slow and easy to stop. Their soldiers use projectile weapons that would not even scratch our armor. They are not warriors. They are barely evolved animals playing with fire." The insults continued for hours. Every aspect of human civilization was examined and found lacking. Human art was called crude. Human music was primitive noise. Human literature was simple stories for simple minds. Jake wanted to stand up and defend his species. He wanted to tell these aliens about human achievements, about how humans had gone from riding horses to flying in space in just 100 years, about how humans had explored the deepest oceans and the highest mountains of their world, about how humans had survived ice ages and plagues and wars and never gave up. But Helen had made it clear. They were here to listen, not to argue. They needed the aliens to accept humanity, not to anger them. The final judgment came from Vextar himself. The tall Chronari stood and looked down at the human delegation. His forearms spread wide as he spoke. "We have considered humanity's application for membership in the Galactic Council," he announced. "We have examined your technology, your culture, your history, and your potential." Jake held his breath. Lisa clenched her fists. Helen stood perfectly still. "Our decision is unanimous," Vextar continued. Humanity is not ready for membership in the Galactic Council. You are classified as a protected juvenile species. You will remain under our guidance and protection. You may not expand beyond your home solar system. You may not develop faster than light travel. You may not build weapons capable of threatening other species. The chamber filled with alien sounds that Jake realized was applause. The other species were celebrating humanity's rejection, but Vextar was not finished. Furthermore, he rumbled, this decision will be broadcast across the galaxy. All civilized species will know that humanity is under Council protection. Any species that wishes to trade with humans or visit your system must receive Council approval. Jake felt like he had been punched in the stomach. They were not just being rejected. They were being treated like dangerous children who needed to be watched. As the human delegation prepared to leave, a young Chronari officer approached Jake. The alien was smaller than Vextar, but still much larger than any human. He looked down at Jake with something that might have been pity. Tell your people, the alien said quietly, that the galaxy has no place for weaklings. Your species barely survived its own primitive wars. How could you possibly survive the real dangers of space? The officer walked away, leaving Jake standing alone in the enormous chamber. Around him, aliens continued to celebrate humanity's humiliation. The sound echoed off the walls like thunder. The journey back to their ship was the longest walk of Jake's life. Every step felt heavy. Every breath felt difficult. They had come here hoping to join a community of equals. Instead, they were leaving as cosmic jokes, primitive beings who would never be taken seriously. But as Jake looked at his companions, he saw something that the aliens had missed. Lisa's eyes were not filled with despair. They were filled with cold anger. Helen was not defeated. She was calculating. They had been humiliated, but they were not broken. The aliens had made their first mistake. They thought they understood humanity. They would soon learn how wrong they were. The trip back to Earth felt endless. Jake Morrison sat in his captain's chair and stared out at the stars. Each point of light represented a sun, and many of those suns had planets with alien civilizations. All of those civilizations now knew that humanity was weak and primitive. Admiral Lisa Hayes could not sleep. She walked through the corridors of the new frontier at all hours of the day and night. The other crew members could hear her boots clicking against the metal floor. Click, click, click. Each step sounded angry. Lisa stopped at the communication center where Lieutenant Dan Foster was monitoring alien broadcasts. Dan was young, barely 25 years old. But he was the best communication specialist in the Earth fleet. What are they saying about us now? Lisa asked. Dan looked uncomfortable. He did not want to translate the alien messages, but Lisa was his commanding officer. The Aquarians are making jokes, he said quietly. They are saying that humans are so weak that a strong current of water could knock them over. Lisa's jaw tightened. What else? The Zephyrians have written songs about us. They call us the soft ones who dream of stars but fear the dark. The songs are becoming popular across their worlds. Lisa felt her hands forming fists. And the Chronari? Dan hesitated. The Chronari are the worst. Their military commanders are using humans as examples of what not to be. They tell their soldiers that humans are what happens when a species becomes too comfortable and forgets how to fight. Dr. Helen Carter joined them in the communication center. She had been Earth's lead diplomat for 15 years. Helen had negotiated treaties between countries that had been enemies for centuries. But she had never faced anything like this. They broadcast our rejection across the entire galaxy, Helen said. Her voice was calm, but Jake could hear the anger underneath. Every species now knows that the Galactic Council considers humanity to be children who need supervision. Lieutenant Foster pulled up more alien communications. The screen showed messages from dozens of different species. The peaceful races are being sympathetic, he reported. The Etherians sent a message saying they hope humanity will grow and learn. But the warrior races, he did not finish the sentence. He did not need to. Everyone could guess what the warrior races were saying. Jake walked over to the main communication console and listened to a Chronari military broadcast. The translator converted the alien words into English, but the contempt in the speaker's voice needed no translation. The humans have nuclear weapons, the Chronari general was saying, but their delivery systems are pathetically slow. Our point defense systems could destroy 1,000 human missiles before they got within range of our ships. Their so-called space fleet consists of primitive chemical rockets that could barely reach their own moon. Another voice joined the broadcast. I heard they asked to join the council. Can you imagine? A species that has not even learned to control gravity thinks it can stand alongside the Chronari Empire. Both aliens made sounds that the translator identified as laughter. Jake turned off the broadcast. He could not listen to anymore. But the damage was already done. The message was clear. Humanity was a joke to the galaxy. Captain Ryan Brooks entered the communications center. Ryan commanded Earth's Space Defense Force, what the aliens had called amusing toys. His face was red with anger. I just got word from Earth Command, Ryan said. The alien broadcasts are being picked up by our radio telescopes. The news networks are starting to broadcast the translations. The whole world will know about our rejection within hours. Dr. Carter closed her eyes. How is the government handling it? President Maria Santos is calling an emergency session of the United Nations. But the damage is already done. People are scared. They thought we were finally going to join a community of advanced civilizations. Instead, we found out that those civilizations think we are children. Jake could imagine the chaos on Earth. For 50 years, humans had dreamed of meeting aliens. Movies and books had imagined first contact as a moment of wonder and hope. Instead, it had become humanity's greatest humiliation. The communication system chimed with an incoming message from Earth. It was President Santos herself. Her face appeared on the main screen and Jake could see the stress in her eyes. I have been in contact with world leaders for the past 6 hours, the president said. The reaction to your mission has been difficult. People are angry, scared, and confused. The alien broadcasts are being translated and shared on every news network on the planet. Jake felt responsible. He had been part of the delegation that had brought this shame to humanity. President Santos continued her message. However, I want you to know that the leaders of the world are united in one thing. We will not accept this judgment. We will not allow alien species to treat humanity as children. We are calling an emergency session of the Global Defense Council. The Global Defense Council had been formed 20 years earlier, when humanity first detected alien signals. It was made up of military leaders, scientists, and engineers from every major nation on Earth. Their job was to prepare humanity for contact with alien civilizations. They had never expected that contact to go so badly. Lisa Hayes leaned forward. What are the Council's orders, Madam President? You are to return to Earth immediately. We are recalling every human ship and every human citizen from outside the solar system. If the aliens want to treat us like children, then we will show them what human children do when they grow up angry. The message ended, leaving the bridge of the new frontier in silence. Jake looked at his crew. These were some of the best people humanity had to offer. They were intelligent, brave, and dedicated. But the aliens saw them as primitive weaklings. You know what makes me the angriest? Lisa said suddenly. They never asked us about our wars. Helen looked confused. What do you mean? They said we were too violent because we fight among ourselves. They said we were weak because we had wars on our own planet. But they never asked us why we fought those wars. Jake began to understand what Lisa was thinking. They never asked who we were fighting against. Exactly, Lisa said. They saw that humans fight wars and they decided we were primitive and violent. They never considered that maybe, just maybe, we fight wars because we refuse to surrender to tyrants. They never thought that our wars might be proof of our strength, not our weakness. Ryan Brooks nodded. Every time someone tried to conquer the world, we stopped them. Every time someone tried to enslave a group of people, we fought back. Every time someone tried to commit genocide, we said no. Helen was beginning to see their point. The aliens live in a peaceful galaxy where conflicts are resolved through negotiation and council meetings. They have never had to fight for their freedom. But we have, Jake said. For thousands of years, humans have been fighting against oppression, slavery, and genocide. We learned how to fight because we had to. We learned how to be strong because the alternative was to be victims. Lisa stood up and walked to the main view screen. Outside, the stars were still shining. Somewhere among those stars were alien civilizations that thought humanity was weak. They called our nuclear weapons obsolete, Lisa said. They called our missiles slow. They called our soldiers primitive. She turned to face the others. But they never asked themselves a simple question. What question? Jake asked. If we are so weak and primitive, why are we still alive? Why did we not destroy ourselves with those obsolete nuclear weapons? Why did we not kill each other with those primitive missiles? How did we survive thousands of years of wars and come out stronger? The question hung in the air like a challenge. Jake realized that Lisa was right. The aliens had made a fundamental mistake. They had looked at human weapons and seen primitive technology. They had looked at human conflicts and seen violence. But they had missed the most important thing about humanity. Humans were survivors. They had survived ice ages that covered half their planet in glaciers. They had survived plagues that killed millions of people. They had survived wars that destroyed entire civilizations. They had survived natural disasters, economic collapses, and social upheavals. And not only had they survived, they had grown stronger. The aliens think they understand us, Jake said slowly, but they have never faced real adversity. They have never had to fight for their lives or their freedom. They live in a galaxy where problems are solved by committee meetings and diplomatic negotiations. But we come from a world where problems are solved by determination, sacrifice, and sometimes violence, Ryan added. Helen Carter, the diplomat, surprised everyone with her next words. Maybe it is time to show the galaxy what humans do when diplomacy fails. The communication system chimed again. This time it was a message from Earth Command. General Robert Kane appeared on the screen. Kane was the highest-ranking military officer on Earth, a man who had spent his entire life preparing for threats that might come from space. I have just finished briefing the Global Defense Council, General Kane announced. The alien rejection of humanity has been classified as a threat to global security. We are implementing Protocol 7. Jake felt his blood run cold. Protocol 7 was humanity's most secret military plan. It had been developed in case first contact with aliens went badly. Very few people knew the details, but everyone in Earth's military knew what it meant. It meant war. You are ordered to return to Earth immediately, General Kane continued. 3 months had passed since the Galactic Council's rejection, and Earth looked like a completely different world. Colonel Steve Turner stood on the observation deck of the new orbital defense platform above Mars and watched construction crews working around the clock. Giant metal structures were taking shape in space, bristling with weapons that had never been seen before. Steve had been an engineer before the alien rejection. Now he was in charge of building humanity's new defenses. The platforms he was overseeing were massive, each one the size of a small city. They carried enough firepower to level a continent, and they were just the beginning. How many more platforms do we need? Asked Commander Susan Blake. Susan had been a Marine instructor before the rejection. Now she was training the first human soldiers who would fight in space. 50 around Earth, 30 around Mars, and 20 around the outer planets, Steve replied. But that is just for basic defense. General Kane wants to build mobile platforms that can move between star systems. Susan shook her head in amazement. 6 months ago, the most advanced weapon we had in space was a nuclear missile. Now we are building battle stations that could destroy alien fleets. The transformation had been incredible. Every nation on Earth had contributed to the defense effort. Russian engineers worked alongside American scientists. Chinese manufacturing combined with European design. African mining operations supplied materials while South American agricultural systems fed the workers. For the first time in human history, the entire planet was working toward a single goal. That goal was simple: prove the aliens wrong. Dr. Patricia Webb walked onto the observation deck carrying a data tablet. Patricia had been working on theoretical weapons before the rejection. Now her theories were becoming reality, and the results were terrifying. The new torpedo tests were successful, Patricia announced. The kinetic penetrators can punch through 6 feet of alien armor material. The fusion warheads can vaporize an area the size of Manhattan. Steve looked at the test results and whistled. Are these really necessary? The aliens use energy shields and advanced materials. Maybe we should be developing similar technology. Patricia shook her head firmly. That is exactly what they expect us to do. They expect us to try to copy their technology and fail. But human military doctrine has always been different. How so? Susan asked. Alien weapons are elegant and efficient, Patricia explained. They use precisely calculated energy beams and sophisticated defense systems. But human weapons are designed around a simple principle. If something is causing problems, hit it harder until it stops. Steve had to admit that this approach made sense. Human engineers had always preferred simple, reliable solutions over complex, fragile ones. A human rifle could be dropped in mud, frozen in ice, or buried in sand, and it would still fire. Alien weapons were probably much more advanced, but they might also be much more fragile. Captain Alex Chen joined them on the observation deck. Alex was in charge of building the new human fleet, and the ships taking shape in the orbital shipyards were unlike anything Earth had ever produced. The first squadron of heavy cruisers will be ready for testing next week, Alex announced. They are not pretty, but they are tough. Each ship can take damage that would destroy 3 alien vessels and keep fighting. The new ships had names that reflected humanity's new attitude: Freedom's Edge, Iron Will, Defiant Thunder, Unbreakable Spirit. They were built like flying fortresses, with thick armor and heavy weapons. They looked crude compared to the elegant alien designs they had seen, but that was intentional. How are the crews adapting to the new systems? Steve asked. Better than expected, Alex replied. The new ships are actually easier to operate than the old exploration vessels. We removed all the scientific equipment and replaced it with armor and weapons. The controls are simple and reliable. Susan had been training those crews for months. The Marines are ready too, she said. We have 18,000 soldiers trained in zero-gravity combat, alien boarding procedures, and close-quarters fighting. They know how to fight in environments where alien soldiers have never had to fight. The training had been intense. Susan's Marines had learned to fight in spacesuits, in the corridors of damaged ships and in the strange gravity fields that alien technology produced. They had studied every piece of information available about alien physiology and had developed tactics specifically designed to exploit alien weaknesses. The key, Susan explained, is that most alien species have never had to fight wars like humans have. The Chronari are tough and strong, but they have always relied on their advanced technology. The Zephyrians are intelligent and precise, but they are fragile. The Aquarians can change shape, but they cannot survive in environments that would just make humans uncomfortable. Steve pulled up a holographic display showing the current state of Earth's defenses. The numbers were impressive. Humanity now had more ships under construction than most alien species had in their entire fleets. They had more soldiers in training than some species had citizens. But the most impressive thing was not the numbers. It was the speed. In just 3 months, humanity had gone from having a small exploration fleet to building the foundation of a war machine that could challenge entire civilizations. How is this possible? Alex wondered. How did we build all of this so quickly? Patricia had the answer. Because we have been preparing for war our entire history. Every human technology has military applications. Every human industry can be converted to weapons production. Every human citizen knows that sometimes you have to fight to survive. Steve understood what she meant. The aliens lived in a peaceful galaxy where conflicts were rare and usually resolved through negotiation. They had never needed to develop the kind of total war capability that humans took for granted. But humans came from a world where war was common and survival was never guaranteed. They had built their entire civilization around the principle that you must always be ready to defend yourself. When the time came to build weapons and soldiers, they already knew how. The communication system activated, and General Kane's face appeared on the main screen. The general looked tired but determined. He had been working 18-hour days for 3 months, coordinating the largest military buildup in human history. Colonel Turner, your platforms are ahead of schedule, Kane announced. Captain Chen, the first squadron of cruisers will begin combat trials tomorrow. Commander Blake, your Marines will be deployed to the outer system defense stations within the week. Steve felt a surge of pride. The human defense effort was succeeding beyond anyone's expectations, but General Kane was not finished. Dr. Webb, your weapon development program has exceeded all projections. The new kinetic systems are more powerful than anything in the alien arsenal. The fusion torpedoes can destroy targets that alien weapons could not even damage. Patricia nodded. We have also completed the stealth system trials. Our ships can operate undetected by alien sensors for extended periods. They will not see us coming until it is too late. Kane smiled grimly. Excellent, because I have news from our intelligence division. The aliens are monitoring our military buildup, but they are not taking it seriously. What do you mean? Susan asked. Chronari intelligence reports describe our new weapons as crude but harmless. Zephyrian analysts believe that our ships are impressive for human construction, but no match for advanced technology. Even the peaceful Etherians think that our military development is just humans playing with dangerous toys. Steve felt anger rising in his chest. They still think we are primitives. That is their mistake, Kane replied. They are so convinced of their superiority that they cannot imagine humans being a real threat. They see our weapons and think primitive. They see our tactics and think crude. They see our determination and think childish stubbornness. Alex clenched his fists. They are going to learn. Yes, they are, Kane agreed. But not yet. We need more time to prepare. Our intelligence suggests that the galaxy is facing a new threat. Something called the Void Swarm has been detected at the edge of civilized space. The Galactic Council is worried. Patricia looked up from her data tablet. What is the Void Swarm? Unknown. But alien transmissions suggest that it is unlike anything they have faced before. Their traditional tactics are proving ineffective. They are losing ships and colonies at an alarming rate. Steve began to understand where this was leading. They are going to need help. Eventually, yes, Kane confirmed. And when they do, humanity will be ready. We will show them that the species they dismissed as primitive children has become something they never expected. What is that? Susan asked. Kane's smile was cold and hard. We have become humanity's greatest strength. Survivors who refuse to quit, warriors who fight with everything they have, and builders who can create miracles when the survival of their species is at stake. The general's image faded, leaving the 4 humans alone on the observation deck. Outside, the construction crews continued their work. New ships were taking shape in the shipyards. New weapons were being tested on the firing ranges. New soldiers were training for battles that would determine the fate of not just humanity, but the entire galaxy. Steve looked at his companions and saw the same D.